The Clover Cafe always smelled like cinnamon and comfort. It was the kind of place that felt safe, worn wood counters, mismatched mugs, and the hum of conversation that never really stopped. Regulars knew the menu by heart, and newcomers quickly learned that if you smiled at the waitress with the calm voice and tired eyes, she'd remember your order the next time. Grace worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. She didn't complain. The cafe was her second home, and its walls felt more like family than anything she had outside of them. She wore her uniform neatly, hair pinned back in a soft twist, with an apron she ironed each morning. But the most striking thing about her wasn't her smile or her quiet grace. It was the pendant she wore around her neck. It was old, not the kind of thing you'd find at a thrift store. Antique gold, delicately carved with the deep sapphire in the center, the kind of pendant people noticed. Customers asked about it often. Family heirloom? My mother's, Grace would always answer. She passed when I was 12. No, one asked twice. She never took it off, not to shower, not to sleep, not even when it tangled in her hair. The day he walked in, the wind had just started to pick up. October had that crisp smell in the air, like something was about to change. The bells above the door rang, and in stepped a man who looked as though he'd never been inside a place like Clover Cafe in his life. Tall, controlled, expensive everything, from his overcoat to his polished shoes. His presence shifted the eye. Energy in the room. People glanced up from their pastries, then quickly backed down. Grace walked to his table without missing a beat. She'd served every kind of person. Tourists, snobs, celebrities trying to be discreet. This man was just another. "Good morning. Can I get you something?" she asked with her usual quiet tone, not expecting anything unusual. He looked up and froze. It was the kind of pause that carried weight. His eyes, gray and stormy, locked on the pendant around her neck. His voice, when it came, was unsteady. "That pendant. Where did you get it?" Grace was used to comments. This was different. "It belonged to my mother," she said cautiously. "She passed away when I was young." He stared at it. And then, slowly, his expression changed. It was as if he'd seen a ghost. "I gave that pendant to someone," he whispered. 30 years ago." She frowned. "You must be mistaken. It's a one-of-a-kind piece." "I know," he said, still staring. "I had it made." He leaned back, visibly shaken. "Her name was Clara. She was a nurse. She wore that pendant every single day until she vanished." Grace couldn't breathe. Clara. Her mother's name was Clara. The man's voice dropped lower, softer, as if he were remembering how to say something he hadn't dared speak aloud in decades. "She was the only woman I ever planned to marry, and then one night she was just gone." Something inside Grace cracked open. Her hands were cold, her thoughts racing. "My name is Grace," she said. "Clara Danvers was my mother." Blinked, stunned, the color draining from his face. "If what you're saying is true," he murmured, "then you're my daughter." The conversation moved to the back booth, far from curious eyes. Grace's manager gave her a worried look as she passed but said nothing. She sat across from the stranger, no, not a stranger anymore, and tried to breathe evenly. He introduced himself. Malcolm Vance, billionaire industrialist, head of Vance Global, one of the richest men in the country. He was also, apparently, the man her mother had once loved. He told her everything. The fundraiser where they met. Her laugh. How she always carried cough drops in her purse. How they'd gotten engaged in secret. How he'd given her the pendant during a trip to Italy. How one day she vanished with no trace. He searched for her, he said. He hired investigators. Reached out to her co-workers, friends, even hospitals. But Clara was nowhere. And then he paused. His jaw tightened. "My father hated her," he said. "He didn't want me marrying someone poor. He said she was after my money." Grace listened, her throat tight. "I fought him. Told him I'd never leave her. A week later, she disappeared." He looked her in the eyes. I think he had something to do with it. Grace reached into her apron. Carefully, she unfolded a photo, one she kept in her wallet for years. It showed a woman, her mother, holding a baby on a park bench. Her smile was quiet but full of love. Grace, only a few months old, stared up at her. Malcolm took the photo in his hands like it was a holy relic. He stared at Clara's face, his expression breaking with something between grief and awe. She kept you safe, he whispered. She disappeared. To protect you. His voice shook. I found a letter. Only recently. After my father passed. Away, my son was cleaning out his belongings. He found it in a locked drawer. He handed it to her. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting soft and trembling. Malcolm, they said they'd hurt you. I had no choice. I'm leaving. I'm sorry. I'm pregnant. Clara. Tears filled Grace's eyes. The words blurred. All her life, she'd wondered. Had her mother run away from something? Or someone? Now she knew. Her mother had run. For her. The next day, another man arrived. Younger, handsome, softer around the edges. He wore a tailored suit, but his posture was casual. Confident, but not cold. Julian Vance, he introduced himself. My father told me everything. Grace led him to the same back booth. She was more composed now, a little. He handed her an envelope. She wrote dozens of letters, he said. They were all hidden away. She kept trying to reach him, but someone made sure he never saw them. Grace opened the envelope. Inside were scanned copies of 4 letters, each one signed, Love Clara. Some spoke of fear. Others were lullabies written on paper. One described how Grace had started walking, how she laughed like Malcolm. She never gave up, Grace said aloud, almost to herself. She never stopped loving him, Julian replied. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that feels like something sacred. My father's not the same man he was, Julian said eventually. Losing her. It changed him. I've never seen him cry. He did yesterday. Grace nodded, eyes wet. I think I'd like to talk to him again. In the months that followed, things changed. Grace didn't quit the cafe, not at first. She kept her schedule light, took more walks, wrote more in her journal. Malcolm came often, always quiet, always kind. He never pushed. He never rushed. Julian started meeting her after work, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with bad jokes, always with patience. Then came the gala. The Vance Foundation's annual charity event was black tie, high profile, the kind of thing celebrities used for exposure and politicians used for networking. Malcolm stood on stage in a tuxedo. Tonight, he said, I want to introduce someone very special. The daughter of a woman I lost long ago, and the daughter I just found. He turned. To her, Grace Danvers Vance. She walked onto the stage in a midnight blue dress. The pendant gleamed against her collarbone. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed. For the first time in her life, she didn't shrink from the light. Afterward, in the garden behind the ballroom, Julian approached. He handed her a folded piece of paper. We found this, he said, hidden inside the pendant, under the gem. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. My sweet Grace, if you're reading this, you found your way. I'm sorry for the silence. I did what I had to do to keep you safe. But I want you to know, you were never alone. Your father loved me. I loved him. And I love you more than anything. Mom Grace looked up at the stars. The garden was silent, the city far below. Her mother was gone. But not really, because love, real love, left clues. And somehow, after all these years, they'd found their way back to each other, not through money, not through power, but through a sapphire pendant that never stopped shining, and the truth finally spoken aloud.